Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Discover New Music podcast from us at Pelt Music. Shortly, we'll be joined by Shadow Smile to discuss their single Signed in Blood, which we've featured over on our Discover New Music playlist on Spotify. But before then, the usual reminders from myself. If you would, please do follow us on social media. You can find Full Pelt on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And finally, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, wherever you're watching or listening. Welcome, Connor from Shadow Smile to the Discover New Music podcast. Absolutely delighted to have you on. We've obviously featured the band's single Signed in Blood over on our Discover New Music playlist, hence we've invited you on to the accompanying podcast. First question is, how the hell are
Thank you
you?
very
How are you
much.
doing today?
I'm very, very well. Yeah, really well. The single's doing well, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you on. I say really enjoyed Signed in Blood and everything else we've been listening to and checking out from the band as well. So the Discover New Music podcast, clue hopefully is in the title for people to discover some new music and bands they might not be familiar with. So we always start off with the same section or segment, the origin story we call it. So for those unfamiliar with Shadow Smile, what's the origin story for the band? How did you arrive at this current point in time?
So originally, we started just before all the lockdowns hit and everything. We just started we wrote a song. Me and one of our guitarists, who's actually left the band now, but we wrote a song, and we were just going to the studio to record it. There was no plan for it. It was just okay. We just got this idea. We'll just record it. It was never meant to be any live stuff or anything. It was meant to be, that was it. That was the end. And then we sort of just posted it on socials, and a lot of people seemed to like it. So we ended up just kind of stuck with it, really.
Yeah.
Then it was great because we recruited band members, mostly our friends that we already knew. Then we became a band and then started doing more songs. And it's just been growing ever since, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it's great when something organic like that can grow, and obviously, especially if it wasn't the original design. Obviously, it's always interesting talking these days with musicians when they say, "Oh yeah, we formed, January or February 2020, just before the because it's probably not a worse time in many ways to start a project." But in other ways, it actually speaking to a lot of the musicians we've had on, it is actually almost been a good thing because it's given them extra time they didn't expect to have, to allow them to write and record and obviously explore where they want to go. I don't know if that's something that you felt as well.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we kind of forged our entire identity by being stuck at home and not able to do anything. We wrote like a whole EP, stuck at home. But the beauty of the internet is that we could jot down ideas, email them over. Someone could add it to their Pro Tools session, and we could keep writing that way. It really gave us a lot of time to not gig, but to really spend time building our, for want of a better word, our brand
Yeah.
and really focus on what we wanted to be, as opposed to just the old way of being in a rehearsal room, playing the songs through, trying to work out what we wanted to do, and trying to get everyone to shut up while you showed them their part. We didn't have to do that, so it was really a creatively excellent time for us. I mean, obviously, it came at a horrible cost, but it was very positive for the band in a way.
Yeah, no. Obviously, the pandemic was horrible for everyone, but it is nice on these podcasts when I get to just explore some of the small positives that perhaps did come out of it. And of course, one of the big positives for us that has come out of all of this for Shadow Smile is the single Signed in Blood, because we have really enjoyed it, stuck it on the playlist, which we don't just stick anything on
Thank
that
you.
playlist. It has to pass a certain test that we enjoy it. So obviously listeners listening to the podcast need to certainly check that song out. And if you can't find it on our obviously playlist, but it's all over the streaming sites, so obviously you can just search for Shadow Smile and you'll be able to find it in all the usual places. But talking about the single then, Signed in Blood, so what can you tell us about the song? How did it come together for you, and what are the themes behind the song?
So that song in particular is it was actually another accident where
Yeah.
we've written a whole album, which is coming out soon. There's going to be another single before that comes out, but we had the whole album sketched and recorded, ready to go off to mix, and we listened through and we were like, it's great, but there's no obvious opener, and there's no obvious opener for live, and we like to start with a bang, get a big theatrical opening. So we need to write another song because there's nothing that's an obvious live opening. Like you have these iconic opening tracks that bands have, like Avenged Sevenfold are great at this. They always had like critical acclaim on stage, and Queen had like One Vision, and these songs that are clearly written to open a show. So we need one of those. So we took that influence and tried to make a groove-driven kind of party song, really. But lyrically, it's inspired by. We're always a little bit not satanic, but the kind of pop culture version of the devil, where it's kind of you've got a ghost t-shirt on, so I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
it's we've always been kind of into that. It's just the most metal thing. So we kind of want to do a song from the point of view of the devil, kind of like "Call Me a Little Sunshine" by Ghost, or "Sympathy for the Devil" by Rolling Stones, or something like that. So so we did that, and it came together really nicely. And then we did a video with lots of fire, and it was quite a metal way to start the album, I think.
Yeah, definitely, and it's quite interesting. Yeah, the story obviously that you kind of had the idea that we still need something here, and obviously it came to the fore quite late. But the thing that jumps out for me is "Paranoid" by Black Sabbath, of course, because I think they literally had a couple of minutes left that they needed to fill on the album, and just quickly jammed something out, and it turned out to be their most successful single. So it's funny how these things can work out.
It's amazing how it sometimes works. I mean, that song came about. I think we had this idea that it was actually a ballad, and it was in 3/4 times. So it was like a waltz kind of thing. And I had those lyrics set for it, and we never used it. So it was just like, oh, just play a riff, and it was like, oh, that's like it just came together in a similar way. Probably not in the last couple of minutes like theirs did, but it really just came together like within. I think we wrote and finished it and recorded it within an afternoon. So it was the quickest thing I think we've ever done, which is but it came out all right, I think.
Oh, it came out absolutely fantastic, and listeners again definitely need to check it out. And I'm glad you mentioned the video, because I always like to have a little look for the video of the songs that were featured, because it's a bit of a lost art these days. Gone are the days of MTV and all the other channels that you used to sit and watch on front of the TV. Of course, we've got YouTube now. But it's not the same really. So it's nice to see when artists do put a little bit of thought, a little bit of effort into the video. And I thought the video that you've put out with Signed in Blood works really, really well with the song. So how did that concept come about for you?
So it was around Halloween when we came up with all this, and I'd been to a screening of The Lost Boys, and I love that film. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's one of my favorite films ever. And in fact, the look of the band is kind of inspired by The Lost Boys in that video as well, and going forward. But there's a scene where they all kind of go into their hideout, and they've got like the torches, the fire on the end, and that's where the torches idea came from. And then throughout our previous music videos, there's always been like a satanic cult lurking in the background. We've got these hoods and stuff, so we've got them in as well. And they're not a real satanic cult; they're just our mates in hoods, but it's they've got the torches as well. So we just kind of wanted a nice performance video where there's not really any narrative in it, but it's just a good representation of us, the way we look at the moment and the way we perform. And I think that's it's almost like a live preview, but set in some abandoned factory with a load of druids.
Yeah, definitely, and it does work really, really well actually. And I think is another good introduction for people checking out Shadow Smile for the first time. So again, there'll be the links for the video in the bio of this episode, and I encourage listeners to check out the video. So all of this is kind of, from what I understand, building towards an album potentially, which you've got plans to, for crowdfunding to get that going. So how is the album progressing for you at the moment?
It's completely done. We started crowdfunding it in the beginning of 2022. We raised the money quite quickly, to be honest, that we needed, and we just we did it, and it's off. We actually just got the the masters back last week. The whole thing's mastered now. We've got the cover arts done, so it's all ready to go. It's just that now we're just waiting on the release date to be announced, and then we're good to go. But yeah, it's ready. It's ready to go. This is the first single from it. The next single's coming next month. So yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely fantastic to hear that machine is turning, and obviously you're heading towards getting that out there, which is going to be fantastic for fans of the band, obviously, and more so for yourselves, of course. So yeah, it's obviously fantastic to hear that the album is on its way and everything's turning as it should do with that. What could you offer the listeners in way of a little taster? What can they expect from the album when it does arrive?
So it's just difficult because if they've already heard of us and they kind of have an expectation of what we do, there'll be things that they recognize, which is like catchy choruses, lots of guitar solos. But there's more in the way of symphonic elements. So there's a lot of strings on this one. I think the songwriting is a massive improvement overall. I mean, I suppose I would say that, but we've definitely worked a lot on refining that process and really looking at songwriting as an art form as opposed to just sticking a lot of riffs together and shouting on it, But I think we really we take a journey kind of through a lot of different subsections of the genre as well. So we kind of start with Sign in Blood, which I'd say is kind of a classic metal with a poppy chorus kind of thing, and then we go through a little bit of an industrial feel and then a bit of a new metal feel and a load of different things, a bit of grunge, but it all kind of comes back. It's cohesive, but it's quite eclectic. So, and it's very dark all the way through. There's no reprieve. It's just really dark, but it has to be because the whole concept of the album is the 7 deadly sins and the journey through hell, and it has to be dark.
It certainly does, but you've certainly whetted my appetite. It sounds really intriguing, so I'm looking forward to that. And of course, it's a bit of a diversion from what I understand you guys were doing. So I think when you first, obviously, as you say, were setting out your brand and obviously introducing yourselves to the world, you concentrated more on a run of singles, purposely almost not releasing an album. So what was the thought process behind that?
Well, previously we've always done singles just because it's kind of, you can do a lot with one song. Then you can use it for content for a long time. You can keep working with that single and then build some momentum with the next one. But with the album, it was purely because we had a slightly bigger idea this time. So we didn't really. It wasn't a case of okay, we're big enough now, we can do an album. It was just we have this concept that we want to do something with. So. Yeah, I mean, we'll probably do singles for a bit after the album, and I don't know. I don't know if albums are going to be around much longer. We'll see what happens with that. I was watching something with Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse, and he was sort of saying there's not really. He doesn't think they'll do another album again. I know Slipknot have said they're probably not going to do another album. So I like albums because I like the long form and I like the artwork and I like the lyrics and I like everything like that. But I think I don't know how long it's going to be viable for, to be quite honest. But but then sometimes you just have an idea for a song, and you have to go with the art really first. I think it's like, okay, what have we got? We've got this song, right? Is it part of something bigger, or is it just need putting out? And previously, it's always just been get it out because it's done. Yeah. And with the album tracks, it was a bit more like, well, this feels like a piece of a jigsaw that needs to. There are some songs on the album, but also I'm as proud of them as I am of any of the singles, but I wouldn't put them out as a single because they're not written in that way. They're written slightly more indulgent in a way, but also more kind of I don't know, they're just not singles. They're not. They've still got the big choruses. They've still got everything that makes Shadow Smile song, but they're just not. They're not made for radio. They're perhaps a bit long or a bit deep in theme sometimes, I guess. For radio to pick up on, but then who listens to radio anyway? So. True.
I mean, yeah, as you say, that debate around the future of albums has been going on for as long as I can remember now, and they still seem viable for now. But like you say, everyone's attention spans are sort of shrunk now, and you need those punchy singles or shorter videos and all this kind of stuff to obviously engage with audiences. A big part of which, of course, is utilizing social media, something I think you as a band are doing quite well from what I can see. And listeners to the podcast, this is the bit where I'll always give out the handles. So obviously Instagram and Facebook, Shadow Smile Music, and Twitter. If anyone's still on Twitter, you can find the band at Shadow Smile 666. So obviously that's how we all keep in touch with each other these days. How much of a focus do you tend to put on the social media side of things, or would you much rather not have to do that?
I mean, I like the fact that we can access fans and fans can access us like immediately. That's quite cool. I would like there to be a bit more mystery about things and to not have to do like, oh, here we are at this show. I do like the old-fashioned kind of, back in the Led Zeppelin days when the whole attraction was that you didn't know who these people were, but you heard this sound that you just, what the hell's that? But I don't know. I think it is just something you can't control. So it's just you've got to get on board, otherwise no one's going to discover you. Or I think some bands do see it as a bit too much of the be all and end all, and they only released a video on Facebook and things like that. But I think it is very much it's the now, and it's how we're living for the time being. So we'll see what happens with that, because some interesting developments going on with Web3 and what's going to happen with the future of artist to audience. I guess the way people consume their music might change again quite soon. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I think when you look at it, everything's kind of social media. It's like YouTube's kind of social media, Spotify's kind of social media, because the way people release now, it's like boom, boom, boom. Here's a post, here's a post, here's a post, and it's very, a lot of the hype's almost dropped out of it. And we've had people where previously it'd be like, oh, we need 6 weeks before your song comes out to cover it, and now it's like, oh yeah, let us know when it's out, because we can't cover it till it's out anyway. And you're like, well, this is flipped on its head. But
exactly,
it's just, but I quite like the fact that we can engage with people, and we get a lot of engagement there. I think because we started out just before the pandemic and did a lot of our building in the pandemic, we're quite fluent with that whole thing and how to release using it. So I think it's a force for good and bad, like most things are.
Yeah, I often say that about social media. There's very positives to it, but there's obviously some really bad elements to it as well. But thankfully, the pandemic is over, roughly anyway, and live shows certainly are back. So the band, have been able to get back out there and play some shows, and I know you've got some shows coming up, such as Hammerfest and Call of the Wild festivals that I noted down. How would you describe yourselves as as a live act, and what is your main sort of selling point that people should come and see you for?
We're really, really good.
I mean, that is the main selling point.
I think we've got a theatrical element. I mean, our influences range from like bands like Ghost and to like Bring Me the Horizon, but then also bands like Queen. So we've got we write everything thinking, how's this going to work live? And if it doesn't work live, we just don't play it. There are songs we've written that we just don't play live anymore because they didn't work quite well. So everything's kind of curated in a way where it's thought about within the set. And we try to make everything feel quite immersive. So we'll have a playlist that plays before we come on. And it's very, we try and make it a bit more of an event than just a gig per se. It's a show, and it's more like going to see Phantom of the Opera on Broadway than it is going to see a band in the pub, I would say. Yeah. But it's but not too many props or anything. It is very much just us and them when we get on stage. But yeah, we just try and make it as immersive as we can, and I think it usually delivers, and people seem to have a pretty good time when they come, and that's our aim: give them the best night we can.
Which is a fantastic motto to have, to try and do that. And it feeds nicely into the next portion of the podcast. It's a regular portion that we call Setlist Science. So I'm a bit of a setlist geek and kind of pay a bit of attention to what bands are out there playing. And it's interesting to hear that you do kind of you want to tailor the shows to suit obviously the audiences, but also you recognise what songs don't work and all this kind of stuff around the building of a set list. So the main question with this portion is how much attention do you pay to the structure of a set list, and do you have any rules that you tend to try and follow?
Definitely have. I wouldn't say rules, but there are definitely I don't know. I mean, we do pay a lot of attention to it. That's the answer to the first question. Is an unbelievable amount of attention is how much we pay to it. But I think it depends on the set length. So if you've got a 20-minute set, I always think you should take influence from the very best bands. You look at the very best bands live, and I always go back to Queen because they're my absolute favorite band. And I look at their Live Aid set, and it's just like it's hit after hit after hit, and they do not relent. And I think that's when we've got a support for, that's very much the mentality. It's like, okay, how many bangers can we get into this 25-minute set? If we've got a headline set, it's like, okay, where can I fit a costume change in, or where can we, do this, that, or the other? It's not, it's very much about peaks and troughs. I think there's, you've got to get your ballad in, but where do you put that ballad? You don't want to kill the atmosphere, so you want to bounce in for the first couple, and then you've got to get your ballad and get everyone waving the lighters, and so there's a lot of thought goes into it, and especially when you're constantly releasing new songs and you're kind of thinking, where does that fit, and which song do we have to drop out to put that in? And then you get attached to songs as well, so you're like, I really don't want to drop this song. I mean, our very first single was called Digital God, and we've recently done a run of shows in London and Nottingham and a couple of other shows where we've actually had to drop that single, and it's like, it's our first song, and it's how do we drop this? But we had to, and because we only had sort of half an hour sets, but you do it, and I think you improve and you tweak it, and a lot of it's so much trial and error, because things can work in theory, and you kind of go, this will work, and then you get on stage and it just chokes, and you're just like, we had a song and we wrote it specifically knowing that it was going to be great live, and this is going to really get people bouncing, and we played it live probably twice, and it was like, this is really like dying out here. We get out and it just doesn't fit, and we moved it around a couple of times, and we just realized it was people like listening to this song, but it just doesn't translate to that arena. So it's a real I mean, you call it setlist science, but I'd say it's almost a science and an art form at the same time. It's kind of like a whole you can get really creative with it. Like another thing is whether you play any covers in your set, and we sometimes play a cover, we sometimes don't. A lot of the time it depends on, say we're playing a festival, we often drop a cover in because it's like, here's, it kind of gives people a little bit of we get who you are now, we get you're for us, or, you're not for us. And I think, I think it's a real tweaking process. It's almost like, like trying to tune an old radio where you kind of got the two notes and you're just like trying to get the two lines to match. It feels like that a lot of the time. And then it's also like having those songs where, okay, this one's got audience participation. Where do we want that? Do we want that at the beginning? Maybe not, because they're not quite warm to us yet. So at the end, then maybe they've warmed up to us and they'll do what we want them to do. Because there's nothing worse than getting out there and trying to get people to clap or go, and then they just sort of ignore you and just look at the back of the room. I think there's a ton of thought. I think any band that takes live shows seriously probably spends a lot of time thinking about that.
Yeah,
I think to look at other people's answers to that, actually, because there are bands I know take it very seriously, and there are bands I know that just turn up and play. So it's
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, this is my favourite portion of the podcast, to hear these answers, because I'm a setlist geek, and like you say, it is interesting to hear, because some people literally they give it no real thought. They've got, well, this is our set list. We've been playing it for the last 2 years on this album cycle, and this is just what we play. You mentioned trial and error. I think that's a big thing for me. for bands to be able to say, well, actually, this isn't working. Let's just change it up, even if it's just a little tweak. Like, well, rather than playing it there, we're playing it there. So yeah, no, your answer's definitely passing my test. You can see how much sort of passion you've got for it. Which, again, as an audience member and someone that is a setlist geek, I can notice that it comes across. So I mean, is that something you've picked up from being an audience member yourself, perhaps, or?
I'm very rarely an audience member. I'm completely my biggest downfall is probably that I don't go and see enough live music. The problem I have is that I love spectacle and I love like really big shows. So
Yeah.
I'll go and see arena bands, but I'm terrible at supporting local scenes, and I know I'll get shot for saying this. But, I like it when we're playing with some bands. We played with a band called Confide the other day, who I love. They're really great guys, and they write really great music, and they put on a great show. But it's very like it's almost Rage Against the Machine like show where it's underground.
Yeah.
But I do like a bit of spectacle. I like Ghost are one of my favorite bands. They're one of when was the last band I went to see? I went to see Tool last year.
Yeah.
I love Tool. And anything with a big show, like I'm a big WWE fan. I love anything with spectacle. And so as an audience member, I'm normally just sort of wowed that I'm seeing like one of my favorite all-time artists. So I probably don't dissect set lists as much as I should, except when I'm in that mode and going, okay, we're looking at Queen's Wembley set, or we're looking at Guns N' Roses Tokyo '92 set. What made it so special, and how can we basically steal from that?
Yeah.
So I guess I look at sets of kind of what I'd consider all-time great shows far more than I do when I'm actually in the moment watching an act. I think really I have a very difficult time switching off, and when I go and see a show, I really make the conscious effort to just switch off and not be in work mode, because it's very easy to get into that way, like, oh,
of course,
steal that idea, oh, that's good, and then you just you end up not enjoying anything in life. So
yeah.
Do you have a favorite set list of all time? I'm curious, with you being a set list geek.
I mean, you talk about bands like obviously Ghost, yeah. Like I'd love a band that sort of will tailor a set list for a show, and I saw Ghost at the Royal Albert Hall, which, the sort of aesthetics of the Royal Albert Hall mixed with Ghost and the theatrics there I mean, that was salivating enough. But when they come out and
when they did two sets?
They did. They played two separate sets, brought back a lot of songs that hadn't been played for a long while, and the way it all played, again, it was just absolutely masterful. So I mean, off the top of my head, and talking of Go, I mean, that would certainly be one that I would pick. But I love when bands. I mean, Tool are another one from memory that they kind of mix it up every single show. So like they've obviously got the diehard fans, and they know they've got the diehard fans that are going to come to multiple shows on a tour. So let's give them a different show. Let's not just play that same set list every single night with the same light show every single night. The bands like that mix it up, I can really appreciate, because again, it shows they're doing the work as well. They're not just going through the motions. So. Yeah.
Well, my wife's favorite band are Clutch, and they do that. Every show they'll go and see multiple shows on a tour, and it's a totally different set. And they just pick on the night what we're going to play. And I wish I knew our songs that well, but I could just pick them on the night.
Well, exactly. I mean, you've got to appreciate the musicianship. I remember interviewing Bowling for Soup a number of years ago, and talking to them, and they said, they don't have a set list. They know what the first song or first two songs are going to be, and then literally Jared, the lead singer, just has these tells, and he just sort of gives whatever signal he gives, and the rest of the band are like, "All right, it's that song next," and they just start. They're ready for it. And so I mean, and again, they've got an extensive back catalogue. So I mean, I was impressed. Like to be able to, at the drop of a hat, go, "Oh, we're playing that song. Yep, I'm straight in the ready for it. I can play it." So I mean, credit to bands like Clutch and Bowling for Soup for doing that. Yeah, definitely. So interesting. I love that part of the chat. About set lists, but overall with our chat, I've identified, sort of, the passion and thought process that goes into Shadow Smile. And another note that I had noted down is just doing a little bit of research for the interview, stumbling across your website and the store. just the effort that appears to go into the merch that you put out there. Again, a lot of bands will just stick the band logo on the chest pocket, and then there you go, it's a t-shirt. You've got some really cool designs that listeners again should go and check out and perhaps purchase. Again, is that a
Please
conscious?
purchase lots of
Yeah,
those.
yeah, exactly. Is that conscious on your part? That you want that look and brand, I think, as you called it earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted a clothing line, if I'm honest. Like,
Yeah.
I always thought if I didn't do this, I'd want a clothing line. But I'm not good enough at designing or anything like that. So I was like, let's stick to singing. But then I sort of got better and like messing around with things. And the thing I found is that, collaborating with people, we have some great artist friends that we can collaborate with. And then sometimes I can just kind of mess around and design something cool. But yeah, I think that merch is like a really big part of any artist now. And we can't just do the logo on a t-shirt anymore because it's just so. You have to have that t-shirt in your range. I think you have to have that. But if you only have that, it's really I don't know. I couldn't do that. It's like having those bands where they just have a picture of the band as the cover of the CD. I just couldn't do that either. It's just like I want everything to be immersive and to like. So what the idea was that we'd have an item of merch or pretty much a t-shirt for every song. So even on the album, there's like a t-shirt for every single song that's on there. And it's not the artwork from the album; it's totally different artwork. And it's just because we know that people like collected things. I mean, if you look at a band like Kiss, like they've gone through so many transitions and so many different things that people want the everything they've ever done and that whole kind of collection almost. It's almost like Star Wars figures. If you look at the action figures, like, oh, you need this variant of Darth Vader and you need this variant as well. And I think people are the same with merch, and I think that's and I really like that. I like the psychology of it. I like messing around with designing, and I also like having another artistic outlet as well to sort of go, all right, yeah, you bought into this, but have you seen this?
Yeah.
I feel like a traveling salesman a bit, but
yeah, but that's necessary in the industry these days, and it's great again because I mean, Ghost are one obviously. I feel I have to buy a t-shirt every time I see Ghost because the t-shirt designs are so cool. But there's other
always
bands,
a new figure on there.
There is
a new Papa.
Precisely. There's other bands though that I absolutely love that I've never bought a t-shirt for because their t-shirts are always just so basic and boring, and you think especially cost of living crisis and that, if you're going to fork out quite often, I mean, like bigger bands these days, 30-35 quid for a t-shirt, you want it to look nice, you don't want just that band logo. So again, credit for yourselves for the work you're doing on that.
We're trying. we're not quite at Ghost levels yet, but we keep getting better, and then hopefully one day we'll have the best merch in the game.
Yeah, definitely. And everything that we've talked about, Signed in Blood, obviously listeners, you need to check that out. And the video, obviously an album's on the way. And obviously the live shows. And again, listeners, follow the band on social media, Shadow Smile Music on Instagram and Facebook, Shadow Smile 666 on Twitter, to stay in touch with the
I didn't even know we had Twitter. I didn't know we had it. I know I've got one, but I didn't know we had Twitter, so thank you.
Yeah. Well, perhaps bring it back from the dead, but then I don't know. Twitter's kind of not in the best place right now, so perhaps not. But certainly, listeners, and you got obviously the band's website as well. You can go along to, and the link for that will be in the bio of the episode. So again, listeners, I encourage you to really, check out everything coming from the band. Keep in touch with them going forward because there's a lot on the way. So it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Connor, and having you on the podcast, and really, really insightful. Sort of aspects of the setlist science. I think that was one of the best answers we've had on the show. So,
thank you.
What would be your final message for the listeners today? I always like to put some pressure on the artists just to end us off.
It's one of those questions that you get a lot, and then you still never know what to say. But final message: just thank you, everyone, for checking out this podcast, for checking out us, for checking out you, for checking out our merch, for buying stuff, and coming to see us live and listening to our music. And anything else, I don't know. It's just a rambling answer, but I guess overall, just thank you, and thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on, Connor. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I really do hope you enjoyed that chat there with Shadow Smile. Make sure you check out their single Signed in Blood over on our Discover New Music playlist on Spotify. And of course, follow the band on social media. You can also follow Full Pelt on social media. We're on Facebook at Full Pelt and on Twitter and Instagram at Full Pelt Music. And again, if you would, please do hit that like button, hit that subscribe button wherever you're watching or listening, because we'll be back very soon with another episode of the Discover New Music podcast.